Okay, to continue with the Christian apologist's explanation that when it comes to biblical passages that seem to imply that the sun is orbiting the earth, or that the stars are tiny, or the moon is a light, or the earth is flat, all of this is just God speaking in metaphor. A Christian by the YouTube name of Stormtrek made a video response to one of my videos, and he quoted the passage from Psalms 98 verse 8 that reads, "Let the rivers clap their hands, let the mountains sing together for joy." And Stormtrek noted that this was good evidence that the Bible clearly employs frequent use of metaphor. That is, unless I'm going to run to my science textbook and say, look at this, another example of a biblical error. Rivers don't have hands, mountains don't have vocal cords. And I like the way Stormtrek expressed that argument, and I have to admit that it was superior to the wording that my Christian apologist used in my 2006 edition of Dialogue with the Christian Proselytizer. So the 2008 revision now has my proselytizer challenging the skeptic using that line of Stormtrek's. So thank you, Stormtrek, and for what it's worth, your name is now in my book's acknowledgement section. Regardless, if that metaphor loophole is indeed valid for explaining why biblical passages only seem to be making erroneous statements about nature, it seems like lots of other religions, they also have poetic sections too. For example, there's certainly no shortage of beautiful poetry and metaphorical imagery in Homer's The Iliad and the Odyssey. So accordingly, it seems that apologists for non-Christian religions could just as well defend the cluelessness of nature that's found in their ancient texts by saying, the Creator is speaking in metaphor. Let's take the ancient Greek explanation that the ancient Greek story that the sun god is pulling the sun across the sky from his fiery chariot. Now, maybe that doesn't reveal a cluelessness of the fact that the sun only looks like it's traveling across the sky because the earth is turning on its axis. Well, maybe that's just Zeus communicating poetically. So really, maybe there's no reason to reject the religious beliefs of other religions because of their ignorance of nature. So again, my proselytizer will explain why this God is speaking in metaphor argument is not valid for defending foreign faiths, but it's totally valid when it comes to the Bible. But as far as the skeptic can tell, there's no rational reason for this special pleading. Now, the same stalemate is reached with the familiar argument that the finite mind of man cannot fathom the infinite mind of God, or the argument that divine issues are a matter of faith, that faith transcends logic, transcends reason. My skeptic acknowledges that yes, certainly human knowledge is very limited, our perspectives are narrow, we're highly fallible, and our so-called logic is often leads us astray. We're led astray not only by innocent human error, but also distracted by the less innocent errors that are motivated by our prejudices and by our vanity. But should the conclusion of acknowledging human limitations be, therefore, we're not qualified to apply any sort of critical thought to what some people say is God's word? Because if that is a valid conclusion, then really on what basis can we object when the Muslim apologist or the Hindu apologist uses this argument and says that the human mind is too finite to dare to question their holy texts? Maybe we don't have a right to dare to question the human caste system, because even though the caste system seems not only inhumanly cruel but utterly nonsensical to our human brains, or at least those of us raised outside of the caste culture, if the finite mind of man cannot fathom the infinite mind of the divine, maybe we should just bow before the superior wisdom of the Bhagavad Gita and do what the gods tell us without question, because who are we to dare to question the gods? Or rather, who are we to question the words in an ancient text that millions of people have believed are of divine inspiration? Now, when it comes to the Bhagavad Gita or the Quran or the Zoroastrian scriptures, my Christian apologists and Christian apologists in general, they do question these ancient texts, regardless of the fact that millions of people throughout history have believed that such texts were divinely inspired. And again, my Christian apologist offers justifications for why explanations like faith transcends reason are weak and flimsy rationalizations when applied to the so-called sacred texts of other people's religions, but totally valid when it comes to the Judeo-Christian Bible, and my skeptic in turn sees no basis for making exceptions for this one claim of knowing God's will among the thousands of claims from rival middlemen. Now, like I mentioned earlier, I started out with the plan of having the skeptic triumph. But my research of Christian apologetics led me to discover that this would be totally unrealistic. So when it came to writing a dialogue between a skeptic and a Christian apologist in which both sides were knowledgeable in their own areas, or at least as knowledgeable as I could make them given my own limitations, it seemed to me that reaching these kind of stalemates was the only realistic way to write the book. And there's lots more to my book than just these stalemates, but I'll get into more specifics in my future videos. Now, I don't expect that my book will gain a large Christian audience, but I do suspect that if any fundamentalist reads it, sure, he will just say that the apologist has the stronger arguments, just as I would hope that any skeptic who reads it would have the opposite conclusion. For those who classify themselves as seekers, or those who have grown up with religion but are now questioning their beliefs, well, I've done my best to present the best of both sides of the argument. And I'll let the jury of the undecided take it from there. All right, thanks for watching.